You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to Diecast Breakdown. I am so excited you've joined us today. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. David Johns. How you doing, David?
I'm doing good, Chuck. What's up, everybody?
And I am so excited today because we are joined by Aaron Yonda of a little channel you might have heard of called Junkyard Joust. It's one of the most interesting channels I have found on the internet, and this story runs a lot deeper than I initially thought, so we're going to be digging into that today. So, Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show today. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Excited.
Yeah, I gotta say, I found your channel a few months ago, and I was really just kind of fascinated because, you know, we're all kind of familiar with downhill racing, and we're familiar with some of the old crashing type tracks, and you found this way to kind of combine the two together, and I just gotta say, first of all, refreshing to see somebody using toy cars the way they're meant to be used, but also the amount of production value that goes into these as well. So for our listeners and viewers who may somehow have not heard of this channel yet, tell them what Junkyard Joust is and how it came to be.
Well, Junkyard Joust is basically a competitive crashing event with diecast cars. The way it came to be, well, it was basically something that I did a lot as a kid and had a lot of fun with, but it wasn't, you know, it was more free form. I think there was a few of the basic rules that I still use from when I used to do it as a kid. Yeah, it just came about because during COVID, I wanted to do something that I could do completely self-contained in my house. And I thought, well, I have this suitcase full of old cars that I used to play with when I was a kid. And even a little bit later, I used to get it out sometimes and run the cars down the track just for old time's sake. Because it still was just as fun to do it as an adult as it was as a kid. And then when I started coming up with the idea and building the first set, the Junkyard, I was like, okay, I want to make this competitive. I want to make this a sport-like thing where, you know, it's teams competing against each other and they have to take each other out. And it's, you know, it's got sort of that intense flavor, but it's also fun and lighthearted and just really a good time.
I love what you just said about the playability and going back. Man, COVID did that, didn't it, Aaron? It brought us, it made us really, I don't want to get too existential here, but we all sat inside. We all had to look inside. We had to look at ourselves in the mirror, and we had to find ways to entertain us. And going back to those childhood favorites is a tried and true method. So I'm with you there, man. I think I would have done the same thing.
I mean, that's what we did when we were kids. If we, you know, are of a certain age, I think there wasn't always something to look at. So you had to come up with something to do. You had to create your own fun. And that's kind of, for me, that's carried me through my whole life. I just kind of created my own fun as I went along, like being creative and you know, making videos and managed to, lucky enough to turn it into a career. And so Junkyard Joust is just kind of an extension of that.
We hinted at this earlier because Junkyard Joust, like you said, is an extension of some other creativity. And again, first of all, I gotta say it's fascinating that I can't tell you how many people we've had on this show that the reason why we know who they are is because COVID happened and they decided to create a YouTube channel or start doing some kind of creative thing that they weren't already doing. And, you know, that it's almost visceral, that nostalgia element to these toy cars that we all have. I kind of had fallen out of the hobby, and luckily my brother still had a lot of my old collection. And then I was like, hey, can I get those back? And, you know, it just started kind of ramped up from there. And it's just kind of cool. I always like to joke that kind of civilization as we know it ended in 2020. And after this, we're kind of just making up our own rules now. Like we don't have to be a slave to function anymore, or the standards don't exist anymore. Everything just kind of went off the rails. We're making this up as we go. We're doing the best we can to be kind to each other, good to ourselves, and find those things that make us happy. And it doesn't matter if it's cringe. It doesn't matter if it's, lame. If it makes you happy, guess, just about every hobby out there has got a large chunk of people. And thanks to the internet and YouTube and stuff like that, we're able to find those people and embrace our, weird or, possibly childish hobbies together. And yeah, it just kind of, awoke memories when I saw your trek, because I was a big, crack ups kid growing up. I grew up in the 80s, and crack ups were these Hot Wheels cars that had little broken pieces that would flip it, spring loaded, flip out and look dented and whatever. And, those were kind of a fascinating thing for me. And they had tracks that were built specifically for crashing. So it kind of, amused me that this was the first time I'd really seen a grown-up collector or enthusiast really doing what these cars are for, and it's kind of cool being a dad now and being able to get out the orange track for the kids. And my daughter's 5, and she's started playing with them, and she, like you said, you don't lose it, that feeling of that sound of the car as it whooshes down the hill and hits the loop and does the thing. It just kind of brings back all that fun excitement that you had growing up, and then trying to figure out which one of your cars is the fastest, which one's the best for the weight and stuff like that. So, you've got a very diverse amount of cars that you work with. And I appreciate that it feels like there are no sacred cows in your collection. You're putting down, cars that are premium diecast as much as you're putting down regular Hot Wheels.
Yeah, it's gotten more and more that way. When I first started doing it, I just kind of used what I had at hand, but then I started collecting. And the best part, so for me, I understand why people collect, but I like to collect, but I also feel like if I don't do something with the cars, then I just don't know why I'm doing it. Yeah. So for me to have this ability to get all these cars and then actually put them into a video, it makes me just feel like I'm doing what's supposed to be done with them in the first place. And I have RLC Club cars that I'll run. I doubt anybody else is even, looking at those cars, nonetheless, running them down a track and crashing. Any car at all, I want to run it down the track. And so I'm kind of obsessed with getting as many different cars as I can, no matter, there is you reach a certain level and you're like, okay, I'm not going to spend more than that. But
Sure.
But, I just, and then sometimes I like to take, and make teams of really beat up, veteran cars that, are all kind of trashed, but still work. And, sometimes they do surprisingly well in the joust.
Sure. Yeah, you use a lot of those old Blackwall era cars, and those guys were heavy hitters, like those big, blocky Larry Wood designs with the metal body, metal base, and they were fast. I always joke one of my favorite cars as a kid was a 82 Cadillac Seville Hot Wheels. And it took a chunk out of my scalp once because my brother tossed it at me because these things were heavy. It was like having a little fishing lure or something chucked at you. But yeah, it's just kind of fun to see, everything from old 70s and 80s cars and new, Auto World cars going down there. I saw you did the M2 57 Chevy limo has gone down the track, and you're just putting everything down. I got to ask, what's the response kind of been? What were you expecting, and what has it been since you started, this project?
It's been all over the place. A lot of people are like, oh man, I used to do this when I was a kid and this is so fun. And you're forcing me to go buy Hot Wheels now. And I shouldn't be, but I have to because I'm watching your show, and even some collectors will watch the show. And I think they actually are curious to see what these cars can do that they have on their shelf. So it's a chance for them to do that, when I run the more expensive ones. But, yeah, I'm getting a lot of premium ones now. I've been doing a lot more heavier vehicles because sometimes they are better at surviving in the joust. So
a lot more metal on those. And, there's a lot of racing channels on YouTube, which is surprising to a lot of people when you first kind of get into the hobby, how many people are into racing Hot Wheels. But yours is so different, so unique, that man, it is an absolute immediate sub when you watch it. For what other reasons Chuck said was that you just don't see these other brands, because, you're not 100% concerned about speed and what rubber tires do and all that. But it's just so fun, Aaron. The energy that you put into these videos is absolutely amazing. Could you just, as we get started, would you just shout out the name of the channel and where to go to find it for people that are watching this and maybe looking on their phone for the channel as we talk about it?
Yeah, it's youtube.com/Junkyard Joust.
Joust, folks. It is one of the best channels in the diecast community, and I think it's appealing to everybody. Chuck, what do you think? I mean, you don't have to be into diecast to enjoy this.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, as somebody who comes from a broadcast television background, I know that this guy's done some stuff.
Been around the block.
Your commentary is excellent. You've got, a much higher production value than it should be. It reminded me a lot of 3D Bot Maker's channel with his downhill racing, because you've got like a really good commentary going. You're shouting out the characters and you're explaining the
backstories and
logic behind this team and this particular car, and these guys are all the wedge guys and the ramp cars and so there's this kind of monologue going as well with that. And so, I don't think that you have to be into diecast cars at all. It's just kind of like those, that phase of COVID where everyone was into marble races.
Yeah.
And, it's that kind of thing. Like, obviously you don't have to be into marbles to enjoy a marble race. And it's the same with this. It's just a good time. And, my wife and I have watched them together. She's not really a collector, but she enjoys it. I'm just thrilled about it. And so I'm glad to see that the channel seems to be doing pretty well and is growing. And when we were talking about people to have on the show, I was like, we got to talk to this Aaron guy, because this thing is wild. You've got, like I said, a bit of a experience with that. So let's talk a little bit about how you ended up on YouTube to begin with, and where your experience as a presenter, as a person in front of the camera and behind the camera comes from.
Well, strangely enough, I guess if you want to go all the way back, in college, I was an English major. So that, didn't really do much for me, except, I guess, help me, speak and write properly, perhaps, or use big words. But I feel like it also just kind of informed everything I did after that, because then I became more of a sketch comedian for a long time. I had a public access TV show. Eventually that kind of took off. I got an agent, and then in 2006, with a friend of mine, we made a show called Chad Vader, which is about Darth Vader's younger brother who works in a grocery store. Now, doesn't attain the heights that his brother did. And that was featured on YouTube at the time and kind of took off, and that sort of vaulted my career into, making content for the internet. And so that was on the Blame Society Films channel on YouTube. We did a lot of sketch comedy. Now, mostly what we're doing on there is board games. We're playing board games and drinking beer on the show, Beer and Board Games, appropriately enough.
Well named.
We've been doing that for quite some time, probably 11 years, something like that. 12. I don't know. I can't keep track. There's too many. Well, then I started another channel that I'm doing video game related stuff. We had a breakout series there called Skyrim for Pimps, which was a sort of story that we created within the game of Skyrim.
Are you doing Christopher Walken, Aaron?
No, that is my friend Jason.
Okay.
He does all the impressions for all of our, for our videos. And actually Jeff Goldblum in Junkyard Joust, who Jeff recently showed up on the Jurassic Park Jeep.
Awesome.
You've kind of really gotten to see, because Chad Vader was, like you said, that was, mid 2000s when that was really big. And it was just kind of, wow, I haven't thought about that in a while. That was a really fun project. So, you've gotten to see this, this platform really evolve as you've established yourself with this other channel, and you were getting started again with something new with Junkyard Joust. What kind of things did you notice were really different about the platform?
When I started the new channel, Junkyard Joust, it was interesting because I hadn't started a new channel for a long time, so I wasn't really sure how that was going to work. I think one of the things I had as an advantage back in 2006 is there wasn't that many YouTube channels and not that many people were doing it. It was just the beginning of the whole revolution for video on the internet, kind of taking over and becoming a dominant form of entertainment. So making a new channel in, 2020 actually, I think. It was challenging because there are a lot of other channels. But one thing that was really nice is that there's a lot of diecast channels that are very supportive of each other. Like, I know when I first started, Chaos Canyon they had a show where they would highlight all kinds of different tracks, and they would highlight what I was doing with Junkyard Joust quite a bit. I'm sure that helped grow my audience. So that was a really cool thing. And, I feel like the whole diecast community is all very supportive, despite the fact that I feel like there are some fans who are, once they start watching one thing like 3D Bot Maker or something, they're just like, this is the only channel that anyone can watch.
Right.
You can't watch anything. I don't know. That's a weird mindset, but some people have it.
I'm really glad you touched on that part about the community, and Chuck and I and the other guys on this show. Like, the awesome thing about this show is we get to hit the whole scope of the hobby. So we're talking to the diecast makers, the fans of the cars, everybody on the periphery. And it's exactly what you said. We all like cars. We all try and support each other. There is a weird, petty drama sometimes, but that's with, everything in the world. But 99% of the time, man, everybody is so supportive of each other. And it's really refreshing to hear, you coming from the background where it hasn't always been about diecast, to pop in, start a new channel, and feel that as well.
I've never really gotten the sense that anyone's really jealous about anything. And and everyone's, the reason we're all doing this is just because we really enjoy it a lot.
Sure.
So, it's just natural that I guess everyone would want to spread the love.
We'll be back with more Diecast Breakdown after this word from our sponsors. The day of giving has come and gone, but the Diecast season of giving continues. We're halfway to reaching our goal of donating 20,000 cars around the world to kids in need. All you need are brand new and packaged Diecast cars and a local charity of your choosing to join in. Help us put smiles on the faces that need it most. Learn how you can join in and submit your donation to be counted at drivendreams.org. Let's end the year strong.
Hey everybody, this is Jovita from the SRT Jovita Show, and you are watching Diecast Breakdown.
Here's this week's small channel shoutout.
Gaslands NorCal.
If you have a favorite Diecast channel with less than 700 subscribers and you'd like to see them highlighted on a future episode, email us at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com. The Diecast Media Network store is here. Wear your passion with pride, featuring designs from Diecast Breakdown, Flying Valiant builds, plus unique designs inspired by diecast culture from Justin Ellis. Visit tpublic.com/Diecast Media Network now.
Hey, this is Chad Reed from Round 2, and you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now back to Diecast Breakdown.
How active are you in strolling through Target and going down the toy aisle and just looking at cars, maybe for your own collection, not for the show, but just for your own personal collection? Are you actively building your own diecast collection?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes there's a car where I see it and I'm like, well, that's not going to be very good at the joust, but I have to have it because it's amazing. But most of the time I won't let myself buy anything unless I'm going to use it for joust, because otherwise then it becomes like an out of control spending obsession.
We can absolutely attest to that.
We can relate.
Yeah, I have to have a limit,
Sure.
I don't give myself enough limits, but there has to be somewhere.
Everybody has rules. A lot of people say, if I'm not going to open it, then I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to have it just to have it sitting on a wall.
Mine is, if I'm not going to drill it and customize it, then it's probably not going to be something I pick up. But although I do break that rule fairly regularly. But I try to, that's really kind of kept me from going too crazy, because you just go, oh, well, it's just another $1 car or another $1.18 car or another $5 car. And the next thing you know, you've spent $45 on a trip to Target and you were supposed to just get milk or something. I'm glad you brought up the community and specifically Chaos Canyon, because Chaos Canyon was actually one of the direct influences of this show, because they were so involved in sharing the other goings on and other events and stuff. And so when we do our live shows, we're always trying to, here's what's coming up in the community. Here's the cars that we're excited about. If people have news or they want to do a shout out, please approach us. And we've had people say, hey, we're doing a build off, and, and that's, I think, really fun. And I think that, like you said, it can be certainly overwhelming. And I think that's why some people go, well, you can only watch 3D Bot Maker or something. I used to try to watch as many diecast videos as possible, and I stopped putting them in my watch later queue once my watch later queue hit 3,500 videos. And I was like, I'm never going to get through these. And it's still sitting there at 3,500 videos. Wow. But because you can burn yourself out without even doing the channel. And I think a lot of people don't realize, even a basic channel, not that yours is basic or this is basic, but even the guys who, we have a guy, Diecast Dude, great guy. He's in the Netherlands. He doesn't own a computer. He shoots everything on his phone. That's still a lot of freaking work to put together. And, and then when you add things like cuts and music and sound effects and graphics, we're putting, our heart and souls into these things and doing it for almost no money. If we're lucky, almost no money. And, right. The burn can be brutal, and I wanted to ask you about that, because you've had, multiple channels. Have you experienced that burnout, and what did you do to kind of, if you did, get back on track?
I mean, I've experienced it a variety of times over the years, just with all the different YouTube channels, but I guess it kind of happened with Joust once. COVID sort of started to ease off a little bit, and, I suddenly didn't have the, 10 hours a day of editing that I had before that, when there was literally nothing else you could do. So I was like, well, I'll just sit here and edit this all day and, put out an episode every week. But then I didn't have that time. So I was like, okay, I need to try to push my Patreon, which, I have some support on. And then I hired an editor, someone who's actually been a longtime fan of my other YouTube channels, and he was really into this, and so I pay him to edit it, so that takes that off my plate, and then I'm able to focus on the other stuff. And actually, so that's Jesse, and then AJ, who does all the graphics and stuff like that. He was also I think he was originally a Beer and Board Games fan. And he helped me with Beer and Board Games website stuff and things like that over the years. And then he said he's into cars, and so he wanted to help out with this. So I created a team, basically. And I basically just used the money that I get on Patreon to pay these guys to make the show, and use the rest of it to, either fund new equipment or buy cars. So I'm not making any money really off the channel. But luckily, I do other content, and that's kind of how I make my money. And then Junkyard Joust is just sort of fulfills itself. And it's a really fun, obviously, like, one of my favorite things to do.
And that clearly shows in the videos. It sounds like you're having a blast making those. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, again, that's why the logic behind this channel was I knew it would take a team, because that burnout happens. And I've seen it time after time. Like I said, a lot of channels kind of sprang up out of COVID, and there's been quite a few of them recently where I've gone, I'm going to go back and check out that guy. And I'm like, oh, he hasn't posted in 10 months. Yeah. Oh no, this guy hasn't posted in a year. You're doing it by yourself. It's really hard to keep that momentum going. And it feels like, especially when you're, we're still very much in the infancy stage of our growth at, 3,000 subscribers. But, when you're out there and it's like, okay, now it's 600 subscribers. Now it's 800 subscribers. how much more of this do I have to do? I've done like 10 videos and I'm only cracking, 300 views a video. How do I keep this going? And, especially if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not somebody with a media background or a marketing background that knows how to do search engine optimization or make a thumbnail, my hat is off to anyone who's willing to put themselves out there and make a video and share them. And I know so many people say, well, I'm afraid I'll do that and people will, laugh at me. And I'm like, well, my thing I always say is the worst thing that they can do is ignore you. The worst thing,
exactly.
if they don't like your video, guess what? They're not going to stick around long enough to leave a bad comment. And I appreciate anyone who's putting themselves out there, but I also know that need to feed the beast of YouTube can be overwhelming for a lot of people. I've felt it here. I actually had to sit out for a little bit, and Mark and David carried the show for a bit while I was burnt out. So it's good that you're doing the right things, having help and relying on your community and involving other people that enjoy what they do. And do you have any other advice that you'd like to give to somebody who's thinking about starting their YouTube channel or starting to share their passion for diecast?
I'm sure most people realize this, but maybe they don't. If you start getting negative comments, that just means that you're reaching more people, and that's a good thing. So, if you, or even like comments that aren't negative, they're just sort of like, well, I didn't really care about what you just did or whatever, just like neutral comments. That just means you're reaching more people, and that's actually really good. So, that's one way to sort of like help you deal with it when you actually do start to get negative comments. I mean, it's the internet. It's going to happen eventually. But like if you feel like their critique is valid, then, you can think about it and maybe make some changes. But for the most part, I'd say just stick to what you're doing and get better at it, because eventually you'll find that audience. I admit that it's extremely difficult in this day and age with the saturation of channels that are out there. But, find something to do that you really enjoy that's a little bit different than everybody else is doing. I don't feel like people should try to do what 3D Bot Maker is doing. If you like races, that's fine, but try to do something else, because they're going, they've got the production company just always going to blow everybody out of the water because they have this really great thing going. So do something a little different and make that great, because then you'll have, you'll catch people's eye over like, oh yeah, that's kind of neat. I didn't have that in mind when I started Junkyard Joust. I was just like, I really want to do this thing I did when I'm a kid, but it ends up being a little bit different. And I think I get people watching, maybe who wouldn't normally, because it's a slightly different, show I'm offering.
And
and you're incorporating that comedy element as well too, because one of the things that I find incredibly funny is when people take something that is, normally like would be reserved for being, I don't want to say silly, but something that a kid would do or something, and just elevating it to the level of, okay, we've got commentary, we've got multiple cameras, we got the slow motion angle, we're going deep on the character study here, and again, that's that comedy chops that you've built from sketch comedy and from making these videos really shows through. And I think that's another thing a lot of people don't see is they, like you said, 3D Bot Maker has a production company. Like he has, background in this stuff. He's a creator, he's an engineer, and you've got your experience in sketch comedy. I edited videos for 20 years. And did video production, and they go, well, how do you make this look so good? You've only done a few of these. And I'm like, yeah, you haven't seen the hundreds of other videos that I had to do to get here. And, just like they haven't seen all of the stuff that Aaron has had to do to make this happen. And that's another thing that I love is when people take something that is objectively hard and make it look easy and make it look effortless and make it so that it feels like it's just flowing. Like this is what I do. This is naturally what I do. And that shows through in your videos. And I really appreciate that. So, that stuff that can't be taught, it just has to be earned. It has to be built. And I think that's something that a lot of people will get disheartened over. And I go, well, you're not going to get there by just waiting for that perfect moment and making that perfect video. You've got to go out there and you've got to, for lack of a better word, grind. You've got to make those bad videos. You've got to pay those dues. And, if you're willing to stick with it and stick through the silence and then stick through the negative comments, and then you can get there. The toughest part is the silence, because it can be devastating if you feel like you're putting all this effort out there and it's just you're shouting into a void.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be tough, but that's the thing I think sometimes people will turn back from that, but then the people that keep going and just plow through and keep doing it, they'll, I feel like eventually you'll get somewhere. You never know how long it's going to take.
You're 100% right, Aaron. It's like when they tell you to write about what just do what you know on YouTube. People will gravitate toward it. And I mention that because I love what you had at the end of your last video, where people were sending you pictures of their homemade joust arenas or setups. So what does that mean to you when you see that?
I can't get enough of that, because I'm just happy that people are doing something that's in essence is just really joyful and just fun. Mm-hmm. And, for me to be able to sort of motivate people to go do that on their own is absolutely awesome. If I thought that when I started making joust that would be the ultimate thing that happened, it would have blown my mind. So it's fantastic. I love it. And I know a lot of people have been doing it for a while, and, and a lot of them actually do it in our Discord. They post some of those pictures of when they run the joust in Discord, and everybody watches them. They do a little text and explain, what happened and who got eliminated. And so we have these kind of have like a Junkyard Joust style thing going on all week in the Discord. And then on Sunday is when my episode comes out. So it's awesome. I couldn't love it more.
If you were like, in that kind of adolescent years, like I was, before video games were absolutely mainline and mainstream rather, that's what you did, man. You sat in your room. You made cities out of shoeboxes. Mm-hmm. You made roads on your carpet in front of your bed. And for you to take this generation and young collectors in this generation who have every freaking type of device, at their disposal to actually sit and play with cars in their room and run races, that is quite an accomplishment. And I know it's good for, I'm not going to over exaggerate, but it's good for mental health. It's good for, innovation, everything a kid needs at that age.
Yeah.
So, just really, really pleased to see all those people trying to emulate what you do in their bedrooms.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. And if they're not on a device and they're doing that and using their own creativity and, creating their own rules and stuff like that, a lot of people do variations on the joust. It feels like it's just an amazing avenue for creativity. Yep. So
there's a purity to it too.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about beer and board games for a second. Have you guys had a chance to dabble in Gaslands or Car Wars yet?
I have Gaslands in my house, but I've never actually set it up and figured out how to play it. Not yet. I want to. I feel like it'll happen.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I've got the book, and I've made several cars, for my build projects. But I just I'm not supposed to be aware of this, but I just got the big fancy 6th edition Car Wars. That will be my birthday present, and I'm very excited about that because
you've been snooping around, Chuck. You've been snooping in the closet.
I may have dropped some really heavy hints and then saw a purchase happen and then saw a box arrive. but yeah, so I was just kind of curious because I feel like I've got several friends who are into diecast and into board games as well, and I think there's a lot of overlap there. The whole miniature aspect of it and the accessorizing, especially with the customizing side of things. So just thought maybe those would be a good fit. I know Car Wars has been around since the early 80s, and it was like 20 years ago, I think it was 21 years ago, they redid it. And it was originally supposed to be like in-scale cars, and now they're 1/64 scale cars because they very smartly realized, we can get people to bring their own cars in, and what's the easiest car in the world to get? It's a Hot Wheels car, or a Matchbox car, and that to make the whole game fit that 3-inch car profile was, I think, a very smart move on their part. I know they had trouble with the 5th edition, and this other one just kind of launched. Car Wars last year just did like a re-release, and it's from what I've seen of the board game channels, much better.
Absolutely hilarious.
Oh yeah, we play a lot of different board games, and mostly we're cracking jokes. A lot of us are either like improv comedians or comedians in general.
Sure.
So it's fun.
I think that's one of the things that, as the world is changing and as AI is kind of coming in, and I don't want to get on a rant on AI. That's not what this show is for. But the people I think that are going to do the best in the future, and I think the comedians and sketch actors are going to have the last laugh, pardon the pun, because they're the ones that have taught themselves and have worked on audience engagement and public speaking and being able to write and deliver and engage with people, because comedy is as much about engagement as it is about jokes. If you're not engaging with people, you can't be funny. You can tell the best jokes out there, and if you're not connecting with the audience, that's why comedians bomb. Good comedians bomb, because they're not connecting with the audience. The audience is just, it's not a hot audience, and you can't kill if you're, not connecting with the audience. So, I think it's encouraging to me, and it's something that I'm going to be instilling in my kids. I want them to take comedy classes and take sketch stuff and do acting, because the things that make us the most human are going to be the things that are going to be the most valuable, as things are changing literally on a weekly basis now, with as much as that is shifting. So, it's kind of cool to see the different ways that, you can take that and make it, it's an engaging video because you're engaging people.
Yeah, for sure.
So, sorry, that was my little rant. I'm done.
Don't touch that dial. Diecast Breakdown will be right back after these messages.
This episode of Diecast Breakdown is brought to you by you. That's right. We are 100% viewer and listener supported, and we are so grateful for those of you who have already supported the podcast and the shows we're planning to add to the Diecast Media Network family. You can find out more about how to support this project by visiting diecastmedianetwork.com or email us about sponsoring an episode at diecastbreakdown@gmail.com. The best way you can support what we're doing right now, though, is to subscribe and share these episodes with your family, friends, and Facebook groups. Anyone you think would enjoy what we're doing. Any extra attention we can get early on will go a huge way in helping this project grow. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with us.
Hello, this is Diecast Dude from the Netherlands, and you are watching Diecast Breakdown.
This presentation of Diecast Breakdown is brought to you by Twice Diecast and Dotson Man Diecast on YouTube. Please visit their links in the show notes and subscribe to their channels for more epic Diecast content.
Hey, this is Champion DJK, and you're watching Diecast Breakdown.
And now, the thrilling conclusion of this week's episode of Diecast Breakdown.
Irregardless of track performance, give us 3 of your favorite cars. Maybe personal sentimentality included in this list.
I would definitely say the Galant Eterna, which is the most beat up car that I have. It was a car that my brother, I don't know what he did to it. I think he ripped the top off somehow, painted it all these weird colors and put stickers on it, and it just looks it couldn't look more disasterized. But
right.
It still rolls. It's an old Matchbox. And it still just speeds down the track despite being mostly destroyed. I think my favorites are mostly ones that I originally owned. Solaire is also a favorite.
Wow. Yeah.
It's got
that's a classic.
It's that red car that's got the very, very low front.
Mm-hmm.
So we call it the Assassin because it really just,
slides up underneath it.
Sends cars flying. And I also really like Lamelt. That was one of my original cars as well. And Lamelt is even flatter than Solaire. It's just like a totally flat car, and it's wide, and it's really difficult to get it upside down. It almost has no sideways, and it's hard to get it upside down because it's so low. And it's just a very unusual car. So those are kind of classic favorites for me.
Fair enough. And most of them, you kind of gravitated toward ones that really had a history with you. There hadn't been any new rookies in a tournament that really blew you away.
Yeah, there has been quite a few. There's a team called the Bandits, which is a team of all very low to the ground, older, like 60s, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s. They're all black. They just, like there's a Mercedes, there's I think a Lincoln Continental or something, and they're all just, they don't really have anything special except that they're just big, bulky, and sort of low to the ground.
Meaty.
Yeah, they're meaty, exactly. And they actually did really well in the last season. So I kind of dig those cars.
Well, what's going on with the current season? Where are we at?
Coming up next week is the 7th qualifier. And actually, Lamelt's going to make an appearance with a new team. Who else is going to appear? Crimson Crashers are coming up later this season. They have a ridiculous assortment of cars. They have some undercutters. They have 2 gigantic, ridiculous vehicles that one of them's like the heaviest thing I've ever run down the track. It's a double-decker bus.
Awesome.
It barely even fits on the track. It's just silly. And then I'm also doing a custom tournament. I did previously the Apocalypse Joust, which was everybody sent apocalyptic themed cars in, and I built a brand new set for that. But now we're going to be back in the junkyard, and people have sent in, I think I'm going through them right now, and I think there's close to like 40 teams that are going to compete. All stuff that everybody, made on their own, painted or tweaked or added stuff to, or you name it. There's even a couple of Frankenstein cars that are like 2 different cars combined in interesting ways.
So everybody sent in 5 cars. Was that the deal? Like you had to send in a complete team?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
You send in a complete team or 2 complete teams. Some people sent extras. I'll probably make additional teams out of those. So.
Sounds like we need to make a Diecast Breakdown team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have any shenanigans where people are, putting like a clump of lead with some wheels on it?
There was a team that somebody sent me a while back that was a 3D printed team.
Yeah.
That had a car that was basically impossible to eliminate. It was a half cylinder with wheels. So it was just gonna, if it ever gotten thrown off the track or anything, unless there's some twist of fate, it was probably not going to get eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they just sent that team to me because they thought, well, he doesn't have to do anything with this. But I always point to it and I say, like, if you're going to make a custom team, this wouldn't be legal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's impossible. I mean, it's like, it would be almost like running a ball down the track, and there's no way to eliminate it.
You have to cross the line to know where the line is, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That guy did everybody the favor setting the line.
He created a reason for the rules.
And that kind of leads to my next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the tournament itself. So let's talk about, for those who don't understand, what the rules are first, and then we'll kind of turn that into, what makes a good car for the joust.
Well, the way the custom joust works is you just you basically create 5 custom cars. Custom can mean almost anything. Either you added paint to it, or you got more detailed and you maybe switched the wheels, maybe you added some weight to it, or maybe you even like put 2 different cars together. Sometimes people put the base for one car on the body of another one. And you come up with a theme. Generally, a team name, you come up with a theme. You can either maybe paint them all the same color or just make them all certain types of things. You can't use more than one of the same type of car on your team. you put 5 cars together, you mail them to me. And I just actually extended the deadline. So if anybody hears this and they're like, oh, I really want to get a team in, if you can do it before the end of the month, then it's still going to be a possibility. junkyardjoust@gmail.com, anybody who's interested. Or you can go to Redline.
And we're in October of 2023.
Yes, exactly. So
yes, October 31st, 2023.
That said, though, I'll be doing more custom, competitions in the future, probably. So hopefully. So, if you hear this late.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll be able to make it this one, but.
Oh, a Diecast Breakdown team will be in a joust, Aaron.
Yeah.
We are committing.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. I would love it.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. So with that in mind, besides making a perfectly 3D printed, unbeatable car and filling it full of tungsten or whatever, what are some of the methods and logic that go into making a good joust car? Because I'm sure they're quite different from a typical downhill race car.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. I think the basic thing that you want is a low center of gravity. So there's a couple ways you can attain that. One would be to, put the tungsten putty in the bottom of the car. And there's a specific type of tungsten putty that I recommend using because most of them are horrible. Mm-hmm. And they sort of ooze all over the place and ruin your car. But there's one specific kind, and I don't recall the name of it right now, unfortunately. We talk about it in my Discord sometimes.
Okay.
I think it's called Red something. But anyway, it's really the only type of tungsten putty you can safely use in your vehicle. You can also use other things for weight. I know a lot of people use actual metals and stuff like that. Sure. It's just kind of up to you once you look into it.
Fishing weights are cheap.
Yeah, exactly. So you keep the center of gravity low. You want the surface of your car to not have any, surfaces that are super wide. Although that said, there's a guy who made a pretty large bus that has a nice flat side that you'd think would be like he'd be getting tipped over constantly. Mm-hmm. But he's done something to the inside of that thing that makes it just like pop back up again as soon as it goes over. It doesn't
weeble wobble.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. It's really astounding. So that kind of thing is good. A lot of people are making sort of gadget-based things. For the Apocalypse Joust, someone made a vehicle with a mousetrap on it. And it had some success until it got a little beat up, and then it didn't. Mm-hmm. But other people I've already seen a couple things where people have created things that when you hit the back, it pushes something out the front and causes a chain reaction that causes something else to happen. Someone sent a truck with a creature from the Black Lagoon, which is a ramped car, glued to the back. So it's like, here's the back of the truck. The car is just welded to it, basically. And so cars are going to hit that and just go jumping off of it. So, but I know a lot of people send really heavy cars. They send cars that are big and powerful. A lot of times, though, I think you're almost going to be better off if you create something light that can survive a hit and that can get tossed around a bunch and still survive. Or at least have one of those on your team and then have, a 200-gram murderer as well.
You're almost getting into like what is that show?
We're borderline Robot Wars at this
point. You're
going
to have somebody coming in with hooks and winches and
with little whirling saws and
I think it's getting to that point actually with some of the stuff people are making now.
That'll be Junkyard Joust 2.0.
Yeah, they're getting kind of battle botsy on it. So
that's it, battle bots.
Yeah.
No, it's terrific fun. And so how does a season conclude? Are there playoffs? Is there an elimination tournament? How's a champion crowned?
With the regular season, I do 9 qualifiers. Then there's the main event, and there's 3 of those where you end up with 10 teams moving on to the finals. And then those teams, you declare one victor. And for the custom, it's fairly similar. It's a slightly different format, but there's like semifinals and a final, so similar enough.
How many people have reached out? Like, has it been like hard to keep up with? Like, I know some of the downhill guys don't even take cars anymore because they get so many. Like, what's the response been?
I haven't quite reached that level yet, although admittedly I do some days spend a lot more time replying to people with questions for stuff than I probably should, because I probably should be recording, but then I get caught up talking about it because I love to do that too. I'm not quite at that level where I'm getting besieged with too many things, but I think maybe I'm right on the edge. But if it starts getting too crazy,
so
then
people get your cars in now while you still can.
Yep.
While the getting's good, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely see this being something that could be really big in this community, that could be like a 3D bot maker type thing, because it's so different. Like, and again, I think the appeal of it for me, beyond the fact that we're using toy cars the way they're meant to be used, is, like you say, it doesn't have to be the fastest car. Cause like that level of, like, when you're doing like 3D bot maker stuff, like downhill racing, like we've had a couple of guys who were like basically the closest thing to professional downhill racers that you can be. And, they're doing like, super sub-millimeter adjustments to the wheels and this kind of lube and this kind of whatever. And, with something like this, there's a lot of different kind of strategy that goes into it. Yeah, you can have a really fast car, but you've also got to think geometrically, and sometimes it can just come down to, you just accidentally stumbled onto the right combination of the car with the right angles and the right weight distribution and whatever. So, it still feels like there's opportunity for someone who didn't do so great in their algebra classes in high school to get in and actually do something fun, and do a custom where you don't feel the pressure to get everything just right, because it's going to get smashed around anyway. So it feels like something that's a lot more accessible to the typical enthusiast who really wants to do something and get out there and thinks, oh well, I couldn't do something that would be competitive at that level.
That actually is exactly what happened in the previous custom tournament, the first one that I ran. It was mostly adults that entered, but there were a couple kids who sent stuff, and I believe it was a 9-year-old whose team that he created, that was cars that had little pieces of construction paper just taped to them. That was his customization, and it was really charming and fun. His team got second place. He made it all the way to the finals, and then he had a little car that was just kind of a flat, one of those GoPro carts,
Yep.
Zoom in.
Yep. And it just had like a sort of squishy piece of construction paper on it that was like magic. The car would, if it would flip over, that construction paper would push it back again. It was unbelievable. And he almost won. He almost won the tournament with just this kind of like,
it's like a Cinderella story in March Madness.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So what, historically though, I mean, you're always going to have these great stories like that, but historically, does it need to be a team of different strengths? Like, do you need a bruiser and a ramp car, or would you just have 5 bruisers and roll the dice? What has worked out in the best?
The teams with variety have generally done the best. Yeah, it's tough because I don't know if there's a specific type of team that's going to be the best, but I actually think one thing that's in the non-custom Junkyard Joust, the only team that has ever won a championship twice is the Copperheads, and they are a team that is just kind of all the cars on the team can pick up the slack if the other cars get eliminated in an unlucky way. So last season, it was 2 different cars that actually ended up surviving and winning for them. Then in the previous season, when it was just one truck that just seemed to survive one crash after the next and just right itself perfectly, it got eliminated right in the beginning. And the other 2 cars came in and they were a team. This was like, so if you make a team, you want these cars to be able to complement each other. Or the thing about having a ramp car, I guess, on your team is that sometimes you're going to take out your own cars. So I think if you're going to have a ramp, you have to think about, what happens if you have to run over your own ramp.
Is it crazy we're talking about strategy in 1/64 car scale?
It's certainly not something I expected to be doing, but man, is it fun. It's just like, there's so many subtleties to it. It's like physics taken to this strange place, and you just never really know what's going to happen because it's going to be different every time.
Chaos theory.
Yeah, it's chaos.
AKA
Yes.
Goldblum.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yep. That's why it's so appropriate that
Yeah.
he's in the junkyard now.
Exactly. It reminds me of, there was a Pinewood Derby I was involved in as a kid, and there were the dads that put like all this effort into
graphite powder.
You know, they're perfectly aerodynamic, super slick, all this stuff. And then the guy that kept winning race after race, he made his car look like a fire engine. It was just a brick, you know. But all he did was just max it out as much weight as he could. Did not worry about the aerodynamics at all. Just the kid clearly painted it himself. It wasn't one of those things where the dad hired an airbrush artist to do it. And that thing just dominated the track. And it was just like, all right, I like this. I'm all right with this. Cause I
remember those guys. You got to shave the wheels.
Yeah, my car barely did anything because I really wanted to make a generally, car, and I was really big into the Dukes of Hazzard at the time, and I was trying really hard to make it look like a real Dodge Charger, and so it looked really good, but it was garbage on the track because I didn't bother with any of the geometry or the weights getting it all just right. I was more focused on making it look good, but and then I still didn't win best looking car because some guy had his dad airbrush the car. But anyway, I'm not bitter at all.
But he's not
he's
not holding a grudge or anything.
Not at all.
That reminds me of, I actually just watched GTR, the Gravity Throttle Racing, their latest race, and it's all electric cars. They have all these different twists and turns. They have a part at the end of the track where the cars sort of tumble down the chance of tipping over. They have long stretches, they have jumps, they have everything basically. And they, all the cars did their time trials today. And then the car that did the best, so there's lots of these, electric cars that are very sporty and they look great. But then the car that got the fastest time just looked like a stack of batteries. It was like a van that looked like a stack of batteries and it just blazed down the track and totally, took the fastest time. And I can't figure out how it remained upright as it went around corners and things. It was fantastic.
All the life lessons, Aaron.
Yep, exactly.
Judging books by their cover and everything you ever needed to know in life.
Yeah.
Right there.
And this is another thing that's just like the wild part of this community. There's so many awesome creators out there, and, there's so many more people to find. And speaking of that, I'm curious, because of your experience as a content creator, where do you see this kind of thing going? Do you see YouTube kind of being this mainstay? Do you see, how do you feel like with TikTok and with other, competing platforms out there? Where do you see the hobby going, and what are you excited about and what are you nervous about, if anything?
Well, I know there are some people doing stuff on TikTok, and I haven't really gotten into it, and I've always wanted to, but, ultimately you have to choose like what you're going to have time to do in the day. And I just haven't had the time to deal with TikTok. It wouldn't surprise me if stuff takes off a little bit over there. But right now I feel like the community is for the most part on YouTube. And I imagine that's probably where it'll stay for the time being. Mm-hmm. I feel like Hot Wheels and Hot Wheels collecting, like diecast car collecting, is raging right now, and a lot of people are doing it. It feels like it's getting bigger and bigger.
We just had a show on NBC. I mean, it's who would have thought that?
Yeah,
they're making a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I don't know if it's peaking, but I feel like maybe there's still more popularity to be found for the whole, arena. So I think I'm worried, I'm like talking about how saturated everything is, and we're talking how many channels there are. Well, what happens if this gets even more popular?
Yeah.
Sure.
Got to be innovative. Yep.
Yeah.
You might even start to see people getting into it that are, maybe not, or maybe just doing it for money or something. That's what I would be worried about. Is that
the corporatization of it's inevitable. We just talked about this on a previous episode. One of the big brands, M2, is now using a fellow YouTube creator to show off their new stuff. They're not, instead of, like Round 2 has Chad Reed, and he does his thing every month and shows off what's going on. But he's a corporate employee. He works for them. He's their marketing guy. And, the brands are now just reaching out to the creators directly and saying, hey, we're going to ship you all of the new stuff for the month and you do the video for us. And, and in some ways that's great. It's been really great for us to be able to really like interact with these brands and even feel like we're steering things a little bit because, we were able to have Maisto's first custom diecast build off, and we're going to be working with another brand to do one of their first real sanctioned custom projects. And I think that's really cool that the brands are starting to recognize that. But I share your concern that it could very quickly just become something that, that the brands are just going to blow us all out of the water and be like, we're just going to make our own content, or we're going to, hire a media company.
I will never take corporate money.
Yep. All right, Wayne.
As far as where I'd like to go, I'm I see all these people doing junkyard jousts all over the place, and I've actually heard that here and there are people doing it out at bars or stores,
really
a little bit or something like that. Yeah. So I get what would really be a thrill to me is if there was a way to take Junkyard Joust,
take it on the road,
and travel around and have events. That would be fun. That would be really cool. And so if I could do something like that, and it might require a sponsor or something like that to make something, to make it happen. But it would be really fun to have events and meet people and do some live jousting.
Aaron, you need to come on to Atlanta in April. The guys at Diecast Breakdown will be at the Hot Wheels convention. I think you need to just roll up with a trailer and set up shop in the parking lot.
That'd be great.
Yeah, well, Aaron, I could talk with you about this all night, and I'm sure David could too, but I know you've got a life to get back to, and we want to be respectful of your time. So, as we're wrapping things up here, any final thoughts, anything that you really want people to leave this interview with thinking about Junkyard Joust?
Try it yourself. Try, if you've never done it before, check it out. Check out Junkyard Joust on YouTube, and then try it yourself and see why it's so much fun. It's just, not only does it make you feel like a kid again, it's just, there's something really fascinating about the whole interplay between, what's happening on the track and all of it. It's just fun.
Yeah. That's it. 3 words.
Absolutely.
It's just fun.
It's just fun.
And that's what a hobby should be. It should just be fun. Well, Aaron, again, a delight. Thank you so much. Again, folks, check out Junkyard Joust on YouTube, and I guess we'll link to that and the Discord as well for people that are curious and want to ask questions. I'm sure that's the best place for people to ask. So go check that out. And again, we want to thank you for joining us, and a special thank you to our executive producer level patrons, Donald Rashik, First and 64th Customs, Video Geek Productions, and of course, Mr. Twice Diecast. Thank you very much, all of you. And a shout out to all our patrons. You can learn how to support the show as well at diecastbreakdown.com, or you can click the little join button down at the bottom of this video. That'll take you to where you can sign up, support the show, and get a couple cool behind the scenes things like some of the builds that I'm doing. And we're looking to add more stuff as we've got more people on. We picked up a whole bunch more this last month, and we're very grateful to that, and grateful to Dane again for donating all of those memberships. It's super cool of him. And again, thank you to David. Check him out at Twice Diecast, and of course, our co-host Mark over at Dotson Man Diecast. And again, I can't stress enough, please go check out drivendreams.org. We're halfway to raising 20,000 cars for kids in need, and it's a really cool cause. We've got a lot of really great folks on board with that, so visit drivendreams.org as a great way to show what this community is all about and the generosity that this community has and the heart that we have towards kids in need. And of course, as always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms, or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.